And not smile, isn't it? Good afternoon and welcome to this week's segment of Taking Note, Musical Conversations in Challenging Times, a program of the HaZamir Choral Foundation that has provided a much needed weekly pause in our chaotic world. My name is Lara Traum and I'm an attorney and mediator in the New York tri-state area. My own commitment to serving as a guide for families navigating challenging times is deeply informed by the formative years that I myself spent falling in love with the HaZamir Choral Foundation and HaZamir, the International Jewish High School Choir. Rav Kook once said, "In everything you do, you encounter sparks full of life and light. Aspiring to rise towards the heights, you help them and they help you." I joined the HaZamir chorale when I was 17, and later became the founding conductor of HaZamir Westchester, founding team leader coordinator, and assistant to Vivian Lazar, the director of HaZamir. The programs were smaller then, and the world at large was a bit more forgiving than the one that we are currently navigating. Working closely with Vivian and Mati, I discovered a community committed to seeking out those sparks full of life and light, a community always rising towards the heights, and a family that continually harnessed the power of music and Jewish texts to guide members of the next generation into finding their own voices and becoming leaders in their own right. Now I'm a proud member of the board of directors of the HaZamir Choral Foundation and an awestruck fan of each and every member of this community. Today, I am honored to host a conversation that provides us with hope as well as harmony. Today, we shall take note of the promise of Generation Z as young singers and leaders discuss Jewish music and identity. Leonard Bernstein once said, "To achieve great things, two things are needed, a plan and not quite enough time." So without further ado, let me introduce our inspiring young participants and our dynamic moderator. First, I turn to Devra Levine, formerly Devra Laserson. Devra grew up at the Francine and Benson Piloff Family Performing Arts Camp and Playmakers Youth Theater, and went on to become the music director of PAC for many years. After earning degrees in music education and vocal performance at The Ohio State University, she now teaches middle school and high school choir in the Willoughby East Lake schools. Devra is excited to be back working for J-Day camps and can't wait to be part of this epic summer. Mira Davis. She's an alum of HaZamir North Jersey, and I forgot to mention Devra is an alum of HaZamir Cleveland. Devra is from 2010, and Mira graduated from HaZamir North Jersey in 2014. Mira is a current student at the H.L. Miller Cantorial School at the Jewish Theological Seminary. While in Cantorial School, she has served as the Cantorial intern at Congregation B'nai Amunah in St. Louis, as well as the Brotherhood Synagogue in Gramercy Park, Manhattan. Mira is currently working as the Cantorial intern at Park Avenue Synagogue in Manhattan. She recently graduated from Columbia University where she majored in music with a specialty in vocal performance. Mira was interested in music and theater from an early age. She joined her first choir at her synagogue, Congregation Agudath Israel in Caldwell, New Jersey, when she was 6 years old. While at Columbia, she joined 2 Jewish choirs in New York, HaZamir Chorale and HaZamir Noded, in which she currently serves as peer coordinator. She has sung solo at Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall, as well as on the Metropolitan Opera stage. It is my pleasure to also introduce Shani Chaimovitz, an alumna from HaZamir HaSharon, class of 2019. Shani was a member of HaZamir HaSharon, a team leader, and a member of chamber choir. She graduated in 2019 and is now serving in the IDF. She joined us last minute and might be leaving a little early today in order to continue her important work of defending our beloved country. Next, I introduce Lilach Abramovitz, alumna of HaZamir Jerusalem, class of 2019. Lilach was a member of HaZamir Jerusalem for 2 years and was a team leader in her senior year. She graduated in 2019 and this year volunteers with teens in Kiryat Shmona as her gap year. Next year, she too will be joining the IDF. Harrison Burke, who is an alumnus of HaZamir Orlando, graduated in 2020. Harrison Burke was the founder of HaZamir Orlando after moving from the West Coast, where he was a member of HaZamir Silicon Valley. He was a teen leader and member of chamber choir for 2 years. He just graduated and looks forward to attending the University of Chicago next fall, where he plans to study molecular engineering and philosophy. Eli Golding, an alumnus of HaZamir Baltimore, graduated in 2020 as well. Eli Golding was a teen leader in HaZamir Baltimore for 2 years, and this past year served as an international co-chair. He was a designer and technical director for his high school student-run theater company, as well as a founding member of the Carver Film Association. Eli just graduated and looks forward to attending Syracuse University in the fall, where he will study theater design and technology. And last but certainly not least, our wonderful moderator, Emma Miller, is the HaZamir Teen Leadership Coordinator and Teen Educator. She first came to HaZamir as the assistant to the director in 2016. Emma, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, is a Jewish educator and professional theater director. In addition to her work at HaZamir, Emma is the theater arts director and a member of the family life and learning staff at B'nai Jeshurun, the director of the Mandel JCC of Cleveland's Performing Arts Camp, and co-founding artistic director of The Hearth, a New York City-based professional feminist theater company through which she produces, directs world premiere plays. Emma has taught children and teens in synagogues, community centers, and schools in Cleveland and New York, and has written original plays and curricula that use the arts to teach students about the Holocaust, Jewish identity, and American Jewish history. She's a graduate of Kenyon College and of National Theater Institute. Emma, I will now turn this over to you as our moderator, and I invite those who are watching to ask questions using the chat feature on Zoom, which I will be monitoring for when we are able to open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara. Hi, everybody. I'm wondering, Devra, if you'll start us off. Devra, we left out of Devra's bio that she is starting next season as the Haza Prep conductor in Cleveland, where she grew up singing. And I wonder, Devra, if you can just talk about where for you is the connection between Judaism and choral music? Why does it make sense to you to combine those two things?
Sure. I think that for me, Judaism cannot be separated from community. Judaism is community. One of the strongest reasons why I stay connected and drawn towards my Judaism is that feeling of community. And I feel the same way about choir in all shapes and forms. And so getting to be part of something that is both a Jewish community and a choral community is just the most amazing, transcendent thing possible. Bringing them together is the most natural thing in the world to me.
I love that. Did you imagine, Devra, when you were singing in HaZamir that you would find your way back as an adult?
You know, I'm a music teacher now, as Lara said, and it's not something I grew up knowing that I was going to be, but I do remember a specific moment in chamber choir with Mati where I looked up at Mati and thought, oh, that's what I want to do. This is cool. This is, this is my future in some way, shape, or form. And I went to a private Jewish day school that didn't have a choral program, so HaZamir was my only model of, having what a choir director could be. And so I think from that moment, I always knew that HaZamir was going to be a part of my past, present, and future.
Lovely. So we'll hear from each of our participants on our panel about this question, but Ellie, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about where for you choral music and singing Jewish music and Jewish texts has affected your own Jewish identity and how you relate to your religion.
Sure, yeah. So for me, being a Jewish teen, and even as a young child, I went to a Jewish day school, but from like all time, I've always connected to Judaism through music. I feel like that's the one thing that I can really, really connect to. And because we sing everything in synagogue, we sing the services, it's a natural connection to then sing these really beautiful renditions of the same text and other texts as a message of unity together. And I think for me as well, I have Israeli family, and so being able to connect with them in that way and having listened to some of these songs, even as a child in their original and other renditions, I recognize some of them when they're turned into these beautiful choral pieces. So that's where really I've connected with it my entire life. And so it seemed natural, like I said, to become a singer in such a incredible choir to sing these same kinds of songs.
Yeah, absolutely. Shani and Lilach, in whatever order, will you tell us a little bit about that experience of singing Jewish music with Jewish people, but for you as Israelis, what that was like?
I think that singing, like meeting all kinds of different Jewish people from around the world, not only from Israel, was a really enriching experience for me, because I got to understand how it really does connect different people, even if they're from the most different background and they have nothing to do with each other in their everyday life. Judaism has something that connects all of us together. So I think that was really special for me as an Israeli, that I grew up with Jews always around me. And I didn't really notice how Judaism had an effect on our connection.
I guess for me, I was pretty awestruck by it, I guess. I'm surrounded by a very atheist environment, and I guess I took Judaism for granted in a way that, okay, I'm surrounded by a lot of people that are Jewish, but Judaism doesn't really take place in their life. I'm sorry if my English is a bit rusty. I've been speaking a lot of Hebrew lately. And it was just this amazing insight that suddenly I see that it's more than just religion, and it's more than just something that says, no, you can't do this, you can't wear that. It's so much more than that, and it really brings people together, and it brings different kinds of observation together. And actually, for me, now in the Army, I met somebody that she was in the beginning of HaZamir Ashkelon, and that was a moment of, wow, it was just crazy for me. And yeah, it's just an amazing experience.
That is a good moment of wow. I like that. Harrison and Mira, will you tell us a little bit, each of you, about where the connection between Judaism and choral music is in your life?
Yeah, Harrison, is it okay if I take this one right now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm actually really glad you asked me that question, because I think up until this moment, it didn't register in my brain that Judaism and music are two separate entities. And I know that's really silly to say, but I grew up in a household that was very Jewish and very musical. So to me, they were always the same thing. right? In my bio, you heard that I joined my first synagogue choir when I was 6. As far back as I can remember, being Jewish meant singing. And being Jewish meant being in a choir and singing Jewish texts. And I was really fortunate that I had a cantor who took an interest in me, Cantor Joel Kaplan at Agudath Israel, and he mentored me and he taught me things about Jewish music. And then I joined HaZamir and I met Mati and Vivian, and they also mentored me. And it's really exciting for me that being in cantorial school, now I get to return the favor and invest in our future.
Harrison?
For me, as somebody who has struggled to put a pinpoint on my Jewish identity before I was part of HaZamir, the level of acceptance and community in HaZamir, and particularly also in choral music, connects the two for me. And being able to sing in a choir, I feel is synonymous with being able to be an equal and also an individual and be unified with other people in the Jewish community.
Thanks. This is for any of you on the panel who'd like to jump in. I wonder if you could talk about a specific HaZamir song or text that plays into your own Judaism that you feel is really relevant to your sense of what it means to move through the world as a Jewish person. Perhaps maybe Ellie and Harrison want to take this one first since they've sung HaZamir music the most recently.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of the music really does connect, especially in talking through the messages that they speak about. I would say first that Karen Orr, which you heard in the beginning, is a song that, like I said, I knew kind of growing up because that was played by my grandparents, like in the car we were just driving. But more recently, I think a lot of the songs that talk about peace and healing have been really sticking with me, especially during this time. And I specifically remember it was almost 2 years ago now when the Pittsburgh shooting happened, the songs that we added to the repertoire, as well as going in person to the concert in Pittsburgh, has continued to stick with me. So that kind of music that does deal with healing and prayer and peace really do resonate with me and do come up in my mind every so often when I'm thinking about the world in general right now, then, and even now, like I said.
Harrison?
I completely agree with Ellie about peace, and I think it even extends further to the time of chaos that we're in now. I also want to add, though, that Tefillah is a really nice piece which resonates with me because it's about solidarity with other members of the Jewish community and Jewish state, and so, yeah.
Lovely. Shani, Lilach, Ellie, and Harrison, as you heard in their bios, are all graduates of the Teen Leadership Program. And one of the things that some of us have spoken about together is the difference between leading in a community that already has a musical foundation, where people are already united by this common interest and spend time singing together. And I wonder if each of you or some of you would like to talk a little bit about what do you think that difference is? What is the experience of leading as a peer facilitator in a community where music is the foundational piece that people share?
I can start.
Great.
I think that like singing in a choir is realizing that you're part of something much bigger than you. Like that you're a small part, a puzzle piece in a very big puzzle. And I look at leadership through a community that is the foundation of it is music, as leadership that takes into account that that realization that I'm not the center of attention, that I'm just one puzzle piece, and I'm trying to sort of help bring everyone together and help move the community in the best possible way.
Lovely, Lilach.
I think that when it comes to communities, then usually what unites is the place that you live, if you're in a youth movement, in school, and it's just as a part of circumstances, you become a group. And I think that having music is a choice, that we're a community, that we don't have to be a community. We can be a group, and we can create music together and then go our separate ways. And I think the challenge when it comes to this type of group is actually creating the community, because it doesn't have to be there in order for the group to be. And once it's there, it's a completely different experience, because you have people that have the same interests as you. They have the same goal as you, and you can meet people that you would never think you'd get a chance to meet and talk to outside of your own personal bubble. And once that realization hits of we're more than just a group of people that create music together, we're a community, that's something special. That's the moment of wow that everyone from HaZamir talks about, that I was sitting there and singing Tefillah for the first time with everybody next to me, and that's the feeling.
Yeah, Ellie is nodding along to what you're saying. So Ellie, tell us what you find resonant about what Shani is talking about.
Yeah, I completely agree with what both Lilach and Shani said. I think that exactly what Shani said, we already have kind of this connection, and that we're all there to sing, and we've all been practicing, especially at certain events. And that creating a community outside of that is kind of the goal of what team leadership does in terms of our role in those events, and helping to facilitate that connection. But at the same time, like Lilach mentioned, we're all part of this group. We're not any higher than anybody else. It's just that we, in the back of our minds, are like, how do we make these connections and relationships happen beyond sitting in rehearsal? And I think that's what's really special about what this organization has been able to do, because even this past year when we didn't have an event like Festival where we were separated and isolated, that community still existed. And was able to survive, and continuing like we're seeing right now on this call, it continues to survive. And that's I think the sign of a really beautiful community, is the fact that we can still thrive when we aren't given the foundation or basics that we're used to having. And I hope to see that this idea of coming together, even when we're not in an event or not in rehearsal, is something that continues into the future of HaZamir.
Thanks, Ellie. And Harrison, for you, what is the difference leading in a musical community? And do you have anything to add to what Ellie said about this experience of leading through a moment where we weren't able to be together as we thought we would have been?
First, responding to, or jumping off of what Ellie said, I would say that it was a very nice continuity to have HaZamir as a community I could be in during quarantine, and I'm sure for the many different teens who are part of the teen leadership groups. And it specifically really helped me sort of separate the community, the social aspect of community and the musical aspect, because they are two separate things, kind of as what Shani pointed out. And it really reinforced for me the fact that the community is the glue which sort of sticks together our separate musical connection. And particularly leading a group of musicians is a special thing, because the values which singing in a choir gives you, the inherent values of like professionalism and being aware of other people and surroundings, and also being aware of yourself, are things which coming into a community are very valuable and helpful to the greater goal of being all together. And also being an individual, being respected, but also being accepted. So, yeah.
Lovely, Harrison.
I can maybe add on to that.
Of course.
I think something that can very show that we have this community is I've been in the beginning of my service, we had a lot of circles of saying, "Hi, I'm Shani from here and so," and every time I said, I sang in the HaZamir choir, and I think that just says that for me, that we're a community more than just a choir.
And that you've carried it with you into a whole different,
I've been telling everybody about HaZamir and showing videos and songs. And
I love it. Devra and Mira, maybe specifically to what Shani just said, can you speak a little bit, each of you, about your experience in a musical community, and what did you learn from that level of community that you found in HaZamir that you think speaks to the kinds of communities you might want to create in your adult professional lives or seek out to be a part of?
Mira, do you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
For me, what I learned most in HaZamir and HaZamir Noded and HaZamir Chorale is that you can strive for excellence and also be a supportive and wonderful community. And those two things are not, you can have both in a community. And I think that a lot of synagogues, a lot of choirs often say, you know, we're just having fun. We are, you know, we're not gonna put too much pressure. We're not gonna whatever. But the thing is, when you are together in a community and you're striving for excellence, right? That builds community, and there's room for fun in that, right? I have made some of my closest friends in HaZamir Noded, and HaZamir Noded sings at the highest caliber. And it's just incredible, and it's an incredible bonding experience. And I think that in my life as a cantor, I want to bring that, and I want to bring that to my congregational choirs, to my children's choirs, to my congregants, right? You can have both. You can have excellence and fun.
Wow, Mira, I could not have put that better. That was not the original thought that was first coming to my head, but I have to jump on and say that I really agree as a classroom music teacher, that I take my students to competitions and performances, and I am always, you know, striving for excellence with my students, but also wanting to create that nurturing community. So I also agree that that's something that I'm striving for. And the other thing that I was going to say is that in high school, I was part of a bunch of different groups that were aiming for Jewish pluralism. And the place that I found it worked the best was most definitely HaZamir. And a lot of the other pluralistic programs that I did were more about, well, let's talk about our different opinions and let's dig into them and let's discuss them. And while that's a beautiful thing, it was a great thing, HaZamir was so different because, you know, while we did dig into those differences, sometimes there was something that just really naturally brought us together. We didn't need to have to work on what we had in common. We already knew what we had in common. And so creating community around choral music has more potential than, you know, any other type of community because of that common passion.
Lovely. Thanks, Devra. For any of the panelists, but maybe we'll start with our former team leader, recent graduates. What does it mean to lead in the Jewish community to you? And why do you feel that there's a connection between being a Jewish person and leading in a community? And if you feel that there is, where is that connection for you? Ellie, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I mean, I think I would say that generally in terms of my identity as a Jewish teen, it's always been a part of me, but especially since moving from a Jewish day school to a public high school, where, you know, labels get put on you very easily, but then you also find who you are as an individual. So besides leading in HaZamir, I also led in other aspects, but I think what was unique to me in wanting to be a leader in other areas in my school and my community that was bolstered by my experience in HaZamir was the fact that I think what's a part of our Judaism is to strive to make the world a better place. So having that push and being given the skills to do that from HaZamir really allowed me to feel confident going out to the world with a very clearly, I'm a Jewish individual, and being proud of that, and then that being part of who I am as a leader. Not everywhere I go, I'm going to be like, hey, I'm Jewish and I'm a leader, but it's all part of me. It's who I am, and that's going to stick with me. I know going into college, I plan to be very involved in the Hillel there, as well as other organizations that will allow me to take leadership opportunities, but that's going to all come back to my learning and my skill building that I did in HaZamir.
Lovely. And for you, there's this idea that there's a Jewish imperative to make an impact, and so you carry it, whether you're leading in a Jewish environment or not, hopefully.
Exactly.
Shani, maybe we'll answer this question before you have to leave us to go back to work.
Sure. I'm sorry, I got a bit confused on what I'm answering.
It's okay. So just tell us what you think. What does it mean to lead as a Jewish person? And is there an extra responsibility or obligation in the Jewish world to take on a leadership position as a young person?
I'll start with the second half. I do think that in the Jewish world there is more of an expectance to take some sort of leadership role. Just take bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah for an example. That we're saying here, you're an adult now and take responsibility. Not sure if adult, I don't want to speak about something that I'm not completely sure about, but I see that there. And to me, I think that I was a leader in all different kinds of programs, where it be HaZamir and if it was my youth movement. And I think that it was different in HaZamir because first of all, it being all of my peers. And secondly, because there's the added value of, it's not just creating a community, it's a Jewish community. Because say the year that I graduated, we did Kaddish in chamber choir. And I remember that a lot of the kids in my chapter only knew Kaddish from I'm losing words.
Perfectly. They knew it in a context, like they've said it in synagogue, right? So they knew it in one.
No. Most of them haven't been to synagogues, and the only place that they have been and said Kaddish was during I forgot the word. I'm sorry.
Right, you're talking about like when you sang it in chamber and people knew it in a context of mourning, but you talked about it actually differently.
Yeah, funerals. Thank you, Abigail. And so to take that responsibility and go and research and then to have a conversation about it and to have people from my chapter talk about why they felt uncomfortable, and now to know that they're more comfortable is something that I wouldn't have thought I need to do under any other circumstances. Yeah. And I think that is something important when we're talking about leadership in a Jewish community, is also to know that, because in Israel it's a bit different because we're surrounded by Judaism the whole time, that if we're in a place that doesn't really know Judaism, then to take the time to research and come back and have a conversation about it.
Right. And you spent time, being both an ambassador for Israel in the United States and sharing a sense of learning about each other's cultures when you were learning about music or just spending time together. Beautiful answer. Thanks, Shani. We are sad that you can't be with us for the rest of our conversation, but we're glad we got to snag you for a little bit.
Me too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Shani, for joining us, and thank you so much for your service. As we move forward with this conversation, I'm actually going to pivot a question to Mira. As Shani goes back to service and we all think about the work that she's doing and focus on hope, Mira, I'm going to ask you, is there a HaZamir moment or in particular a piece of music that you carry with you all the time that comforts you, that gives you hope? Perhaps one that we can think about as Shani goes back to work.
The piece that I immediately think of as a piece of comfort, probably not applicable to Shani going back to work, is Cantor Gerald Cohen's Psalm 23. That piece I take with me everywhere I go. I've unfortunately sung it at funerals. I have sung it as a solo piece in concerts, and most importantly, I've sung it with HaZamir and with Zamir and with Zamir Noded. And even with the HaZamir alumni choir. I sing it a lot. It's a piece that, you know, the text itself is beautiful, but the piece of music itself is just so gorgeous. And it paints the words in such a beautiful way, right? Gam ki elech begeit sal mavet. Even though I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death, I feel you with me. And the piece, the music, just like it lilts and it feels like you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death. It is just such a gorgeous piece. And whenever I hear it, I can't help but, you know, feel comfort.
Would you like to share an excerpt from it with us today?
I would love to. I'll sing a little bit of it, maybe the first verse.
Wonderful.
Adonai roi lo echsa binot deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenoleni nafshi Yanecheni b'magle tzedek, Yanecheni b'magle tzedek, lemon shemo. Gam kilech begit al mavet, Just a little excerpt.
Thank you, Mira. I know from the chat that I'm not the only one who's really moved by you sharing that with us, so thank you. As we think about and talk about comfort and hope, I can't help but think about the very strange time that we're living in and the increased isolation that we've all been feeling and operating under for a while now, longer than we thought we would. And I wonder from our panelists, what about this pandemic, if anything, has affected how you think about the future and your future and our collective future as a community? And maybe Harrison will start.
Sure. I think a very particular, aside from missing out on the festival this year and the concert this year in HaZamir, but particularly going through the second semester of senior year in high school, which is in our society a really momentous occasion where you have graduation and a host of other different things which are supposed to be extremely wonderful and climactic and a bookend for high school and even up your life up until that point. And going through that in the pandemic, it really highlighted for me that amidst all sort of the bad and the loss going on in the world, when it's mixed with points of really intense happiness, it's extremely confusing, and it really makes you want to pinpoint the things which you care about most, and know which direction you're trying to head, because facing that in a very uncertain way, which is the default for everyone, because nobody knew this was going to happen, and it's not something I have or a lot of my peers have gone through before, this a mixture of loss and also rewarding things. It puts a certain imperatives on me through this time, and also moving forward, to be very clear with myself of which direction I need to go in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Harrison. And Lilach, who I now can't see on our screen, but I know she's here. When we can sing together again in the United States, which some of you have been able to do in Israel, and when we can all be together in the world in a way that we haven't been in a while, what do you think will be different, or hope might be different?
Well, I really think that at least for me, it made me appreciate what I have in my life in terms of community and friends and family. I think that all of this pandemic just made me realize how much I need to appreciate what I have. I think when things will go back to normal, I hope at least that people will be a lot more thankful for what they have, and that we will take the useful things that we learned during quarantine and during the pandemic into our everyday life as well, like using Zoom and knowing how to bring people together, not only face to face. And I also think that, at least for me, it's made me a lot more humble towards the future, because we tend to sort of go through life and think that we know what's going to happen tomorrow, and we know what's going to happen next week, and we have everything planned out, and we kind of feel like we're in control. And for me, this whole quarantine and pandemic has made me realize how much I don't know, and I need to be humble to the world and to what's out of my control, and sort of accept that. So I think that I hope that that will be, in a good way, what will change in our future, that we'll all be more humble towards the fact that we really don't know what tomorrow brings.
Thanks, Lilach. I couldn't agree more. Devra, I think, has something she'd like to offer in this vein also.
First of all, Lilach, that was so beautiful. You couldn't have said that more beautifully. And I fully agree. I think one of the things that I have realized as a teacher of, as Harrison was speaking, I'm teaching students that age right now, and watching those second semester seniors have to go through a transition in life without a ritual is really, they felt really ungrounded, right? Like Lilach said, we think we know what's going to happen. We count on these rituals in our life, and we count on being able to go to shul, and we count on being able to experience certain rituals in our life. And that is what gets us through the tough times. And all of a sudden with coronavirus, a lot of our rituals, both secular rituals like graduating from high school and religious rituals like going to shul, all of those things were taken away from us in a lot of ways. And I think this has made me realize the importance of rituals in our lives, in my life, in my students' lives. And as a teacher, I had to find ways to create those rituals for them. And because I'm a teacher in a public school, so they weren't necessarily religious rituals, but they were rituals. We had a little senior Zoom recital where every senior got to sing something. And my students reflected that that was really helpful to have that ritual. And so I think that as we move through this time as both musical leaders and Jewish leaders, we need to think about ways to put rituals back into our lives in new and creative ways. And so I think, like Lilach said, that we're going to be more humble, I think it's also going to make people more creative. We're going to get out of this and we're going to be more ready to think outside of the box. And like she said, not just think we know what's coming, but be a little bit more creative.
Thanks, Devra. I agree. And I'll say for myself and maybe for others who are listening that I hope when we're back to normal, I have the 6 of you panelists. You're the first people I want to be with. And I'm ready for you to make me more creative and hopeful, and we'll take on the world with all of you together. I'm going to turn it back to Lara, who will lead us in some more questions.
Yes, so as we've been listening to these thoughtful insights and really beautifully worded responses, I've been looking at a number of the questions that you've posted in the chats. In the interest of time, I'm actually going to combine a few of the questions, and Emma, perhaps you'll help me direct the questions to our various speakers today. So the combined question is more of a global zoom out, which is, how do you see music building bridges to bring about peace? And how do you translate your love for music and singing to people who have not had the experience of being in a choir?
Wow, lovely question. I wonder if perhaps Mira wants to take that one first, and then if anyone else on the panel has something they'd like to add, they can.
Okay, I want to address the latter part of the question first, that how do you explain choral music to people who haven't sung in a choir? This is the question I ask myself every day, and I think it's a really great question. Like, we are part of this magical thing, this magical entity that is a choir, and when we sing together, we become one, which also sort of goes to your question about music as a bridge for peace. Right? I think the best way to bring people together is through music, right? People may not like certain types of music, but everybody likes music. And everybody can talk about music and everybody can experience that together. Which is why I think even if, you think you can't sing, as Mati says, everybody can sing, you should join a choir at some point in your life. It's an experience that is unlike any other. It brings people together. You're singing the same thing. You're maybe singing this incredible texts about peace and about health and happiness and all these things together, right? I'm not very athletic. I've never played on a sports team, but I imagine that it's probably similar to that, but even more so, because when you're making music, you're giving a part of yourself, right? You are interpreting the music. The music can be as beautiful and as beautifully written, but if you're not giving it that emotion and that intensity, right, it just makes such a big difference. And when you're making that together, how could you not get along? And maybe that's oversimplified, but that's what I believe.
Thank you, Mira. Would someone else like to weigh in as well?
I think I'd like to say that if I had to express to somebody who's never been in a choir what's so special about it, I think I would have to say that it teaches you how to equally bring yourself and listen and give space to another person. Find the balance.
Thank you. So, today we've had a beautiful conversation taking note of your identities, of how you've carried music, of how you've carried togetherness, and how you can teach us how to carry that into the future with you. I thank all of you for your inspiring comments, for your thoughtful responses. We are truly in awe of who you've been and can't wait to see what you continue to become as part of our community. Thank you to Emma, our dynamic moderator, and to everyone who joined today's Taking Note. So, this particular conversation, it has made me myself so optimistic and hopeful about our collective future. I am sure that everyone who is watching and speaking today cares about that future just as much as I do. And if you care about the future of Jewish music, the future of Jewish people, If you believe that it's important to keep the next generation engaged and knowledgeable and comfortable in their Jewish skin and connected to Israel, meeting wonderful singers like Shani and Lilach, and creatively empowered, I encourage you to please consider making a donation to the HaZamir Choral Foundation to continue to support programs such as these and many, many more. You can make a donation at www.hazamirchoralfoundation.org. Thank you so much to everybody, and it is now my honor and privilege to turn the screen over to Mati Lazar for a special message.
4 months ago, we thought that today we would be gathering in Stamford, Connecticut, greeting one another at the start of the North American Jewish Choral Festival. Instead, 4 weeks from today, we invite you to greet each other at the start of the 2020 online North American Jewish Choral Festival. 5 days and 21 different programs, beginning Sunday evening, August 9, and ending Thursday evening, August 13. If you love Jewish music, you've got to join us.
Wow, this sounds fascinating. How is this online festival different than the 30 preceding festivals?
Well, Danny, usually at the North American Jewish Choral Festival, people stand in long lines waiting to get to the buffet meals. At the online festival, we don't have any lines at all. Of course, we also don't have any meals.
At most choral festivals, even I bring long pants and white tops to wear at our final performances. But at the 2020 online festival, you don't even need to wear pants.
Most North American Jewish choral festivals, you might be a little bit distracted by the pitch or rhythmic challenges of the person sitting next to you. At the 2020 online festival, everybody's on mute.
And at most festivals, I have to choose between dozens of workshops at any given time. At the 2020 online festival, you can attend 4 workshops each day and you won't miss a thing. Even better, all sessions will be recorded and available to registered participants to watch live or at a later time.
At the North American Jewish Choral Festival, we all divide up, we work on a new piece, and then we perform it for each other at our final concert. At the North American Jewish Choral Festival online, we'll all learn a new piece, we'll rehearse together in sectionals, and then you'll have the opportunity to record yourself and participate in a virtual choir that'll be released with hundreds of singers and thousands of people watching.
Well, I really want to be there. Marsha, tell me, how do I register for this event?
Registration for the festival is open now. The registration fee is $180. And if you're a member of Gen Z or anybody up to age 30, you can register for just $54. To register, go to the HaZamir Choral Foundation website and follow the link in the news article that appears right at the top of the page. Or you can look at the link below.
Please join us for the singing, the workshops, the evening concerts, the virtual cocktail party, the new virtual choir video that you will be making, the Staircase Hallelujah Sing, and of course, the closing, moving final tefillah. Don't let COVID-19 keep you from the music. If you love Jewish music, you've got to be there. See you on August 9th. Thank you for joining us today for our special Taking Note conversation featuring Generation Z. Please remember to register for our online North American Jewish Choral Festival. And please join us next Sunday afternoon, July 19 at 4 p.m. for our next Taking Note conversation. Our guest will be Eleanor Epstein, hosted by Scott Sokol. Thanks for being here.